PGA Nation, we are back, and we are back with the final major of the year. Big week ahead of us in Scotland. I am stoked, and there is nothing more exciting than going to bed knowing the tournament is going to be played while you're sleeping, waking up mid-round and just seeing what's going on as soon as you wake up. It's the most fun. I love the Open Championship week, and because of that, we called in the big guns to draft with us tonight. Special guest joining us, Greg DuCharme. If you follow golf, you already know who he is. He needs no introduction. Of Sirius XM Radio, and of course, the First Cut pod. Greg, how you doing tonight?
Boy, I couldn't be better. So excited to be here with you. Thank you for having me, especially for such a big event like this. So I'm really looking forward to it. I cannot believe this is the last major championship of 2024. What a year it's been. What a major championship season it's been. And I'm sure that this week at Royal Troon, we're going to get more of the same.
I totally agree. It did feel like this season kind of flew by. It was like we're already here at the last major. It kind of feels like it's still in the beginning, but here we are. It's been a fun season, but it did fly by. Let's not let go too fast. This last major is a big one. It's going to be a fun week. Let's soak it up. But before we go forward, the big congratulations is in order to team audience who took down the draft, stopped me from getting a three-peat with a big win. And so always, by getting your win, you got some work cut out for you. You have to pick the draft order. If you want to go first, you want to go last, somewhere in between, you let us know. The first person to drop an order in the chat will be the order we take. In addition, a special treat you get this week. Not only will you be selecting the order, you will also be selecting who you're going to draft with tonight. Your choices are Spencer and myself. You can pick your team captain. Who do you want on your side? The other will draft their own team. Same rules apply. The first person to pick their captain and put it in the chat between Spencer and myself will be the one that you guys will draft with. David, how you doing tonight?
I'm awesome, mate. Look, I love the Open Championship. Firstly, being based in New Zealand, it's such a better time for me than the PGA Tour. Like, I'd rather stay up late and like keep watching golf until like 2 a.m. and fall asleep on the couch if it's not interesting, or just kind of go through, rather than PGA Tour. I have to wake up at like 4 a.m. to watch a tournament that finishes at like 11. That seems like a lot harsher. And it's always exciting going to the Open. We get to find out what the course is like. We get to see how players are playing. It's that last chance at glory, really, to get the major championship, the last of these like kind of big tournaments to really jump into. So, yeah, look, I'm absolutely excited to see who's gonna win this week. And how about you, Spence? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to hopefully drafting with the audience here. Like, Joel, no offense, we can't even keep the internet straight on your end right now.
Listen, it wouldn't be right if I did our last major show and didn't lose connection at least once on Lush. Just part of the theme of the year. So I got my loss in, and now we should be good to go for the rest of the show.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope on that. But, you know, David and I both had Oberg last week in the outright market. That was a disappointing conclusion to that event. I ended up adding Robert McIntyre at 5.5 to 1. I probably cost myself 4 units by not getting that ticket pre-event. It's kind of the one bet on Wednesday afternoon that all my numbers started pushing in that direction of that being one of the best values on the board. But, you know, it's been one of those things for me. Like, you know, you have good runs where things go well. I've come second place 5 times. Like, David wants to, on this show, like, he's had a lot of second place finishes. Like, that's been the outright market for me. It's been second place finish after second place finish. But for this particular show, I think the one difference is, and we've seen what's happened when Joel's been a part of the audience, he just makes all the picks for them. Sia, when he's a part of the audience, just randomly makes his own selections too. I'll just be the face on the show. We'll go with what the audience says, and we'll have some fun with it.
I hate that. I hate it so much. I want you to be demanding who they take. I want you putting your stamp on their picks and then showing up next week and thanking or making them thank you for the victory that you get.
That's why, Joel, the audience has already said we are absolutely not drafting with Joel. It's behavior like that. It's your authoritarianism, dictatorship kind of lineup building that comes in whenever you get to be captain of the team audience. And addressing the second place finishes, that is 5 tournaments in a row where my lineup has finished in second place on the PGA Draftcast. Ivan in our chat in Discord was referencing it and sort of described me as he's like, you're by far the most consistent player on the Draftcast. So maybe mine's like single entry, kind of cash entry kind of lineup, and you guys are all drafting like these large GPP, like high upside, going for the milli maker, and I'm kind of just like min cashing every week at the moment. So tough week for me. I had Ludwig, I had on the ISCO Championship, I had Cootie and Hoey, 2 of the 5 in the playoff. Hoey should have won that tournament as well. Both lost it. But then in the third tournament, I had Sergio Garcia. So I got 15-1 on Sergio winning in the Live Tour. 1 out of 3 isn't bad, but would have loved to have hit the triple last week because it was a very genuine opportunity to hit the triple last week on those tournaments.
Well, I'm going to add, David, I was going to like your opportunity this week to get a win, but then we called in Greg, and now I like Greg to win. So you're really probably going to get another second play. But Zach Jeffers, appreciate you. The order is in. It's going to be Spencer and the audience drafting. Greg, congratulations. You'll be picking first tonight. Right. It will be audience and Spencer second, Dave third. I will be going last. Before we dive into the draft, Spencer, as always, has the best course breakdown in the industry. Spencer, tell us what you're looking for at Royal Troon in Scotland this week.
So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds from what we've seen from Royal Troon in the past. I'll touch on a couple things with it. Like 6 consecutive winners at the venue had been American since 1962, before Henrik Stenson's victory in 2016. We'd also had gotten 5 of 7 tournaments that had delivered a winning score between 10 and 13 under, with Stenson's result once again proving to be the one core outlier there. When he got into a shootout with Phil Mickelson, 20 under par for him, 17 under for Phil. I don't know how much credibility should be given to those totals. You got an entire wave that got wiped out. You got their wave that got the best of it. JB Holmes ended up landing 3rd on the leaderboard at 6 under. However, that answer sort of pushes me in this point of the discussion that I want to have, because even if we've had steady expectations here, there has been this shift at the track that has occurred since we've last seen it in action. There's been, anytime you get a deviation, you get a modification of the statistical expectation that comes into play. 9 holes have received brand new tee boxes. That's going to add over 200 plus yards to the property. That distance is noteworthy for a couple reasons, because I have a lot of accuracy in my model. There is a true one-shot penalty that comes into play for wayward drives, gorse bushes, pot bunkers, any of those factors there. But the one thing is, when you get an extra addition of distance, I don't know if we're necessarily building models that are correct when we take this super accuracy approach. I still have more accuracy, as I talked about at the end of the day. I still think that bomb and gouge mentality is not going to work. Maybe it will for the first couple holes when you have those short par 4s, but I was trying to find golfers that could highlight the importance of finding the short grass. You're going to have these fairway lies that are not always perfect either. Undulation comes into play. It's going to accentuate this strategic link style approach. You're going to have to correctly traverse a course, and you're going to have to do it from a thinking man's perspective. Got these really small green complexes. You have the complexity of the wind, the complexity of shots that are going to move in different directions from the way that these holes are laid out. Anytime that you get a link style venue, there's always going to be some semblance of weather that's going to play a factor. Now, is it going to be 15 miles per hour or less? Or is it going to be some of those more havoc style link style venues? I don't think we're going to necessarily get that from what I see. You might be able, and I'll let David and Greg talk about this, if they see any advantage to starting in a particular wave for DFS, or if there's a certain wave that we should be looking at. But I think it's a really interesting tournament because, as I always say, you get this extremely soft pricing for DFS, but on top of it, you're going to get concentrated ownership every single time in a lot of those same areas.
Boom. I love it. There you have it. Greg, I would love your input. What are you looking for this week at the course in Royal Troon?
Yeah, these weeks are always very interesting, breaking down the course. And Spencer always do a great job with the course breakdown. I try to read it every single week. Every week you put one out there. So I appreciate that first and foremost, because it's very thorough work, as you just heard. I do think we could get a little more wind. It seems like the gusts can get up into the 20-mile-an-hour range. We're in the low teens for sustained winds. If there is an advantage to be had when it comes to the waves, I think it's very slightly late early. And the only reason for that is it seems like the highest winds of the week happen on Friday afternoon. Now, how specific, how dialed in are these times at this point on Tuesday? That's tough to call. So I'm leaning slightly toward late early, but I do think there's still an avenue for someone in the other wave. I don't think one wave's wiped out like it was last time we were at Royal Troon. And then as it relates to the golf course, I think what Spencer said about this being a thinking man's approach is really the style that you have to go after. Whether that's somebody like a Colin Morikawa who can put the ball in the fairway time and time again, or it's somebody who's a little longer, like a Cameron Young, for instance, who has shown great aptitude on links golf courses of multiple styles. But I think those are both options. So I'm not personally linking myself or tying myself to a distance versus accuracy type of player. But I am much more focused on who has done well on links before. I find a lot of those guys are on the longer side, but also an interesting trend this year when you look on the PGA Tour, a lot of these long hitters are getting more and more accurate, which I think just furthers their advantage. But look, all in all, if you're a Bryson DeChambeau and you hit it a long way, it's always an advantage. The question is, can you align your strategy to utilize that club head speed effectively? And the strategy that he used at Pinehurst, I don't think is one that's going to work, but I think he will have a different plan as well. So the strategy is the number one thing, in my opinion, for the players this week.
Interesting. It is top-notch analysis from Greg. David, anything to add?
No, I mean, just look what wonderful course breakdowns from both Spence and Greg there. I mean, just some of the best in the business that you're going to hear. I mean, my initial take on Royal Troon, you look at the first 9 and it's like it's almost all driving accuracy. It's avoid the pot bunkers. It's hit your wedges into the greens. You're going to feel like you need to hit the ground running because you need to make a ton of birdies on those first 7 holes. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind. And then it's like holding on for dear life after that. And it's kind of like 2 polar opposite 9s because you got that driving accuracy those first 9. Then on the back 9, it's all long holes into the prevailing wind. You've got out of bounds down the right, and it becomes much more of like a driving distance, total driving type test. And for me, it's really dialing into some of those ball strikers. You're going to get a large number of wedge shots here, but then on the back 9, you're going to get a large number of shots over 200 plus yards. So, and the par 3s are for the most part over 200 plus yards as well. So targeting those players who are kind of unique in the fact that they've got dialed in with their wedges, but then also got strong long game as well. Those approaches over 200 yards and total driving, I think, is a really key stat for me, of that ability to kind of switch between fairway finding on that front 9 to suddenly having to get a bit of distance and being forced to basically get out there to carry some of the key hazards that come on the back 9. Holes like Railway, where Jack Nicklaus made a 10 famously. I don't know if you heard of him, but Jack Nicklaus was quite good at golf, right? So you don't make a 10 on the hole unless at least it's very, very difficult. So I think it's going to be a really fun watch, and I think that's what makes Royal Troon such a spectacle, is that you do get this flip and this like kind of leaderboard change potentially, where guys are suddenly at 4 under, and then on the back 9 they shoot +5 and they end the day at 1 over, and you get these kind of swings. So I think it's going to make really, really good viewing, and super excited to see how everybody handles it.
It is certainly going to be a fun week in Scotland, watching the best players in the world try and manage this course. Greg said it best, and I agree. This is going to be a strategic weekend. The guys who can have the best plan and strategy are going to win. And the reality is, it's going to be a strategic weekend for us two picking winners. We got to be strategic and correct to make some money. But without further ado, let's pull up the draft board. As a reminder, if anyone is new to the Draftcast tonight, the way it works is we're doing your typical snake style draft, kind of like you would do in your fantasy football leagues, 1 through 4. Greg will be going first. Audience and Spencer drafting together second. David third. I'll be going fourth. I'll get 2 in a row, and then we'll go back. The big caveat is you will need to stay within your DraftKings salary. So what that means is you can't just take all the best golfers. You have to make sure you can afford your lineup at the end of the draft. I will say, team audience, thank you, because I actually wanted to go left tonight. So I am glad to be stuck in the 4-hole. But without further ado, Greg, who are you going to take with the first overall pick?
Well, I'm thrilled to have the first overall pick. So thank you to the audience. And this one is a layup. It doesn't require very much analysis at all. I think this is a season right now that is, it's a top-notch season on the PGA Tour, obviously. One of the best we've seen in a long time. But with a win this week, we have a chance to see, one of the maybe top 3 seasons on the PGA Tour of all time, and that's Scottie Scheffler. You think about the ability of him to develop strategies and execute on his strategies. Whether you think it is a driving accuracy contest or a driving distance contest, a ball striking contest, whatever it is you think, Scottie Scheffler's the man. So can't leave him on the board. He's my first pick.
I would have to agree with you on that one. Scottie Scheffler is certainly
Is Joel gone full robot for everybody else as well? Yeah. Hey, I'll speak about Scottie Scheffler because I don't know if you guys know it, but he's pretty good at golf. Hey, if we're talking about a golfer who can manage his way around the golf course, I don't think there's anyone better in the game than Scottie Scheffler, right? Like that really is the key of how Scottie Scheffler's been compiling these victories, is his ability to manage courses, know when he needs to go for it, know when he needs to lay back and play it safe. He's really got that skill set in. My only qualm, and it seems absurd to say that you've got qualms with Scottie Scheffler, right? But my only qualm is Open Championship golf, like at its core, is extremely volatile. Like it just is. You've got to get bounces. The wind's going to change. There's weather. You could hit it into really thick rough and lose your golf ball and suddenly you're 3 off the tee. That can happen. And so the risk comes if we're going to have a very popular, chalky Scottie Scheffler, who's also extremely expensive. Is this a week where you maybe can take him on where there's a lot of volatility? Because when he's priced the way he's priced, you kind of want to finish like, top 5, top 3? So, I mean, that would be my only counter argument. Obviously, Scottie Scheffler's great at golf. Obviously, there's every chance he goes out and wins this tournament. So you're getting a ton of upside with this selection there.
Yeah. One thing I'll even add to that is, there's no question. Scottie Scheffler, to me, he's the best player. He probably should be the first pick. But the question to me for this week is, can you build a winning lineup without Scottie Scheffler, even if he wins the tournament? And that's what I'm thinking through with because of his price tag, right? You'll have to take Scottie and then get some good value picks. But there'll be lineups that maybe have 6 guys in the top 10, not the winner, right? But 6 guys that are all maybe in the 8 and 9K range of bounds. Now, who knows? We've seen that happen before. We've also seen that not work out before. But that's just something that we could potentially think through. But in terms of being a good player and good fit here, there's a lot to like about Scottie Scheffler this week. Spence, you and audience with your first ever combined pick. Audience thinks they have the pick in already. They don't know the rules. You run the show now, Spence, and enlighten us. Where are you guys going?
I mean, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to go with what the audience ends up selecting here. So if the audience wants Rory McIlroy, we are going to be taking Rory McIlroy.
All right. Well, if that's the case, Spence, are you aligned with that pick? Would you have taken Rory yourself, or would you have gone a different direction?
I would have taken somebody else first. That's not an answer that I do not like Rory. I think that there's a ton of reasons to where if we are directly comparing Scottie and Rory, that 1,400 savings is very enticing for me. Like we talked about it, David, you and I, like even during the US Open, it's a volatile course at the US Open. It's another volatile course here. That doesn't mean that Scottie's not going to win this contest. I am not going to ever go out on a limb and say that with the golfer that's playing some of the best golf that we've seen since Tiger Woods. But there was a name for me. And when the name is selected, I'll say who it was. I don't know how long he's going to last. I think he's going to be popular, but there is somebody I really like this week. There's 2 players I really like, but there's one in particular that I really like at the top of the board, near the top of the board, I should say.
Well, don't tell the audience because then they might take them. So hopefully one of us can snag them. Greg, how about you? Are you interested in Rory McIlroy this week?
Yeah, very much so. I think that Rory has shown an ability to compete in links golf, very often. He has a great record in the Open Championship as well. I think he's shown he has figured out the recipe for playing in major championships. It seems like every major he gets a little closer. He plays a little more appropriate with his style when you're talking about being aggressive or conservative. He started to get some putts to fall on Sunday at the U.S. Open. And, the thing that Scottie Scheffler lacked last year was the ability to make putts inside of 5 feet. And anytime that's the thing that's holding you back, anybody can make 5-footers or 3-footers. And Rory McIlroy certainly can as well. And so I think it's a hurdle that he can jump. And quite frankly, there's nothing to lose. It's not going to hurt any worse than it did at Pinehurst. And I think Rory knows that, and he'll come in with a good attitude. And it has absolutely piqued my interest.
I think it would be a great rebound story after what happened in Pinehurst for him to bounce back here and go out and win the tournament. I would certainly be rooting for him if he's there. David, would love your take on Rory, and then you're up with your first pick.
Yeah, look, no qualms with Rory. Obviously, he's also very good at golf. Look, I think there is a history of Rory McIlroy demonstrating that when he has a heartbreaking loss like he had at the US Open, that over history in many different instances, he's actually then managed to come out and actually perform very, very well very quickly thereafter. You take the 2011 Masters where he absolutely choked that victory. Soon enough, he was winning a major championship. You take the Open at St. Andrews, where he got absolutely steamrolled by Cam Smith, who just had an amazing back nine, and he didn't make anything coming in. Well, very shortly after, he won the FedEx Cup playoffs. Had a roll. So Rory has shown the ability to basically turn it on after those sort of losses. I'm going to go and take someone else at the top of the board who I think is probably who Spence was alluding to. We'll find out very shortly. But I don't think that Xander's going to get back to me if I don't take him here. Joel's going to get 2 on the loop here. So I'll take Xander. He's had a second before at the Open Championship at Carnoustie, obviously a particularly tough edition. I do think it's going to be quite tricky this week. It's a really exposed golf course, Royal Troon, and there is a lot of wind that's going to come into play this week. There are some heavy gusts coming in. I like his ability to counteract those and stay in it, and then his ability to win basically at pretty high totals across his career. He's had a number of victories under 12 and under or up basically. So he's got a good history on links, and obviously he's played well at the Scottish Open as well. He won at the Renaissance Club back in 2022. So I do like him this week. Not necessarily how I would have started my build, but look, we are where we are, and I think Xander's got the all-round game. Final thing I'll touch on is over 200 yards. He's the best in the world this year by quite some margin. And so his ability with those long irons, I think on that trickier back nine particularly, will be a real asset for him, as well as on those long par threes.
Xander also confirmed good at golf. Greg, any issue with Xander Schauffele this week?
No, I think Xander provides a very high floor. It seems like he's always finishing somewhere around that T15, between T10 and T15 in Open Championships, with the exception of 2018. It seems like even when he doesn't have his best stuff on the PGA Tour, that's kind of a poor week for him, is a T15 finish. And I think there's a lot more upside in the tank. So, even after the win at the PGA Championship, Xander has kept on rolling, and there's nothing that says he won't do the same this week.
Boom. There you have it. I love it. Spence, would love your take. Are you interested in Xander this week?
I always like Xander. I've talked quite frequently on this show and just throughout the space that my model's much higher on Xander's potential. I always talk about this, and for DFS, it doesn't necessarily hold the same weight because people are more willing to play him. I've kind of given this answer in the outright market, though, where you get this public perception because of his lack of perceived win equity, and you run into a lot of spots where people don't want to back him. Interestingly enough, that is, even though he is number one in my model, and we're looking at 3 of the 4 projected favorites in win equity. I mean, that's not going out on a limb here inside of my math. That's not who I would have taken first overall. Like the Xander pick, like all 3 picks that have been made so far, it's hard to argue against the profiles, but The name that I like the most is still out there. And then there's a secondary name that I made a decision in the outright market when push came to shove with it, that I decided to take player B over Xander Schauffele, which is a bit of a clue for some people out there. But no, I think all the picks make complete logical sense.
Well, I hope I'm about to steal both those picks that you just referenced there. And I'm going to make an interesting point here. There's clearly an upper tier. Obviously, a lot of those guys in the upper tier were just taken. For me, that upper tier in this kind of field goes down to Colin Morikawa at 9.9. And at 9.9, that is a big amount of savings compared to, the 11,000s and 12,000 guys are paying for Scheffler and Rory. Yes, I am taking Morikawa here, but I'm also taking him with Ludwig, who I take every week. And I think the interesting point I'm making, I'm not going to overweight. Obviously, accuracy is going to be extremely important. But if you're looking just at this upper tier from Morikawa and up and stopping at 12.7, so not counting Scheffler because he's a machine and he hits every ball perfectly somehow, those are the two most accurate players off the tee in this upper tier. So if that's something that you're highly weighting, if that's your big metric that you're kind of falling back on, you can go for Ludwig and Colin at a much bigger savings than you get from, some of these other guys in the upper range, and you're kind of leaning into that accuracy. So when I said in the beginning I wanted the fourth pick, I wanted it for this reason. I had a feeling that the draft might fall this way, and I was able to get both my two value stars that I wanted at the beginning of this draft. Greg, I'd love to get your take. Are you interested in either Ludwig or Colin Morikawa?
Very interested in Colin Morikawa. And I think that what Colin has done with the putter is extremely, exciting. He has become a very reliable putter, really, ever since the Masters. He's gained strokes basically every single week, putting with one exception since the Masters. And we're starting to see some consistency there. We know how good he is off the tee. One concern, maybe Scottish Open, he had a shot at number 11 left. It seemed to spook him. All of a sudden, we had a different guy the rest of that back nine. But I do think he'll be able to rebound, get that straightened out with his game, and we'll see that same ball striking that we're used to seeing. And Ludwig is young and resilient and extremely talented, can be very accurate off the tee when he's driving it well. But we saw that kind of slip on Sunday. He may have a little bit of a Sunday issue, which may come back to hurt you. But look, just like Xander before the PGA, you may have a Sunday issue until all of a sudden you don't. So I think he's probably closer to breaking through the barrier than that barrier breaking him.
I think you're spot on. I am a little bit concerned about the Sunday issue, especially because it just happened last week. And so it's like, how much is that going to be on his mind, especially at a major now, a much bigger tournament that he's following up with? But, I'm not going to overweight that. He's young. It hasn't been as long of a history of choking on Sundays as we've seen some other guys do. So I'm going to give him a pass for now. If it happens 2 or 3 more times, then it becomes a permanent issue. But for now, I have to give him the pass. How about you, Spence? Are you interested, or was I right in that one of your first overall pick would have been Colin or Ludwig?
You got one of the two in Colin. It's still not the number one pick that I would have made. Now, so here's the discussion with Colin that I would like to have. It was a very close decision for me at the top of the board, as I talked about, of trying to figure out if I wanted Xander or if I wanted Morikawa to start the build with. And I ran numbers, and as everybody knows, I run it over a 2-year perspective. I shrunk it. Let's just look from when Xander won the PGA Championship. What have both of those two players done since that moment? Off the tee, Xander plus 0.55 strokes per event, Morikawa plus 2.34. Iron play, Xander plus 3.02. That was aided by a plus 7.1 shot output that he got at the US Open. Morikawa 3.22. The thing that shifted this for me was the around the green and the putting. I have always said that when you give an elite ball striker a higher than expected return from their baseline with the around the green game and their putter, that's typically when a victory ends up occurring. Morikawa in that plus 1.54 around the green. Xander, as great as Xander is, plus 0.625. And then with the putter, Xander is going to carry that at plus 4.02. Morikawa, though, brilliant himself at plus 2.72. I think Morikawa is really close, and we've talked about this with almost every player so far. There is, and Greg said it best, like there is this lack of belief of somebody being able to get across the finish line until they get across the finish line. And we got it with Xander at the PGA Championship. Morikawa is starting to get that stigma attached to him a little bit of not closing out these rounds on Sunday. Oberg has done the same thing. Like those two players in reality, Joel, are the two closest almost every single week that aren't getting across the finish line. I would say Morikawa from a consistency standpoint, even more so. I would have loved to have started my build with Morikawa as my second choice, but first name is still on there right now.
All right. Well, to be determined. I'm excited to find out. David, you got your second pick here. You started with Xander. Who are you looking at to follow that up?
Well, I think I know who Spence's pick is. And I don't know. Well, I'm between two names. I might be taking one of them here. And we'll see. We'll see. I think the other person will get taken. And then we can chat about it. I don't want to reveal anything just yet. I'm going to take Tommy Fleetwood. I feel that Tommy Fleetwood... Is it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. There we go.
Oh, wow.
Tommy Fleetwood has been trending towards a major for some time. Like, he really has. And I don't see a situation where Tommy Fleetwood ends his career without a major championship victory. We've seen him win throughout his career on the DP World Tour. We've seen him being awfully close on the PGA Tour. It would just be such a Tommy Fleetwood thing for him to return to his home in United Kingdom and then get victory at the Open Championship. We know how much it means to him. He's got amazing history on links. I won't run through it all, but particularly at the Open Championship, he's finished 12th or better in 4 of his last 5 appearances at the Open. For me, he's had a better year this year than any of those prior years that he's had. And he's come in here with better form. And he's that rare mix of highly accurate with the driver, but also driving distance as well. You can switch that on the back 9. So I really like his chances this week. It kind of, for me, feels like it's Tommy's time.
Tommy Fleetwood. I like the pick. Spence stole your guy. We'll let you go first. Tell us, why do you love Tommy Fleetwood this week?
I've made this argument quite a few times that whatever you think Tommy Fleetwood's, and this is an outright answer, but whatever you think Tommy Fleetwood's win projection is or win equity is for an event in America, it doesn't translate the same way for these European link style courses. I've gotten a lot of pushback. Fleetwood is on my outright card at 25-1. And one of the answers I've heard is he doesn't win golf tournaments. Okay. He doesn't win golf tournaments in the United States of America. He does win golf tournaments. So when you put him in situations like this, I don't think that this is one of those spots where there are some players where they need to win somewhere else before they go and win a major. I don't believe that's the case for Fleetwood. He's won enough around the world. He's had enough success. He's been so close so many times in these spots, hasn't actually gotten himself across the finish line. I can't recall a moment where my model has liked Fleetwood more than it did this week. And funny enough, with the way that this build started for everybody, like those are my top 6 projected win equity candidates. It might not be in the order of how they were drafted. It's not too dissimilar with it, but now the draft gets interesting because now decisions have to get made past this point. Like we got all the really high-end names off, and now we'll go from there.
That is interesting. The first 6 picks are the highest upside in your model. I love that. Before we move off Fleetwood, Greg, I got to get your take. Are you also on Tommy Fleetwood this week?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if I'd put him on my outright card. I may be one of the people Spencer's talking about that's saying, he doesn't win golf tournaments. And, I understand that that's going to change at some point. So I certainly understand where you're coming from. What I really like about Tommy Fleetwood is what he's done in the Open Championship specifically. And it seems like after missing his first 3 cuts when he was much younger, he's figured out how to contend, how to play in these events. I think his game as a whole really fits this model. And I do believe that Tommy Fleetwood could go out there and get himself in the mix. And whether he wins or not, I do think he'll have an opportunity to sweat it out on Sunday with him.
I love it. And I'll tell you what, I don't think this is the last we'll hear of Tommy Fleetwood this week, as he's likely going to be in my first round leader mentions later in the show. Spence, we have some controversy for you. There is a pick locked in from the audience, but there's also audience members requesting that you make the pick yourself. You, as team captain, make the decision.
Well, this is how you get the audience to turn on you. I've seen this game before. I feel like this might be a burner account, like that. These reactions coming in from Joel here, trying to get people to turn on me. I think, like, if I was to make the decision based off of all the names that were thrown in there, I would pick Hatton. Hatton was the choice that I really like this week. I'm a little bit lower on Finau than the public consensus seems to be. Think he's safe. Don't have a problem with him. Top 10 in my model for safety. I'm fine if the audience wants to go towards Tony Finau there. I would have gone probably in the direction of Hatton, though.
So to confirm, you're locking in Finau for the pick?
Yeah, I mean, that was what came in first. I'm playing by the rules here, unlike other people on this show.
All right, audience, listen. Last time I drafted with you guys, I overruled you, and I end up helping you by getting the better players. Spence is not going to help you. I hope it doesn't work out for you guys, but Finau is the pick. Greg.
Okay.
Tony Finau this week.
Well, I love Tony Finau, and if he was still on the board, he probably would have been my pick for a couple reasons. I like what he's done in Open Championships so far in the past. I like the way that he's played over his last 5 weeks, all of those finishes inside the top 20. And he's really settled in on a putting style, which, look, I think that's a huge advantage. He's no longer searching. He doesn't have the toe way up in the air anymore. And he's got this claw figured out. It's level and it's working. It's progressively getting better. So I like players that are trended in that direction. He's finally getting some payoff on the great iron play that we've seen from him pretty much throughout the year. So I think Tony Finau is a phenomenal pick.
Boom. Endorsed by Greg. And Greg, you're up now with 2. You took Scottie Scheffler first. You're going to have to get some value to make that work. Where are you looking to go from here?
Yeah. So this is my second choice, which at one point was my first choice after Scottie Scheffler. I think it's the right play. I think it's Tom Kim at 8,300. Okay. I do believe in his accuracy off the tee. And while I don't think that's the most important thing, I think that's going to give Tom Kim a real significant advantage here this week. Keep him out of trouble. He finished tied second in the Open Championship here last year. He's got a great record at the Scottish Open. I think Tom Kim has an opportunity to really become a special link style player. And he's been pretty good in the majors as well. T26 at the US Open, T26 at the PGA, T30 at the Masters. I think he's shown the ability to contend in the big ones. I love what he's doing. Like I said, the accuracy off the tee, his iron play has been phenomenal. I think Tom Kim is the right play here.
Well, I'm with you on that one. I love Tom Kim this week. I love the way he's playing at 8,300. It feels like a great value pick to pair with Scottie Scheffler. David, would love your take. Are you interested in Tom Kim this week?
Yeah, really, really interesting through the seek around here, because in terms of my headliners on the outright card, 3 of them have just gone on those last 3 picks. So Tommy Fleetwood's on the card, Tony Finau's on the card, and Tom Kim's on the card. And Tom Kim just quietly could be like excellent at links golf. I mean, at the Scottish Open, he's gone 3rd, 6th, 15th. He finished 2nd at the Open Championship last year. So obviously there's great links form just straight across the board right there. The other thing I've found really interesting with Tom Kim when I was diving into the numbers is, like, has Tom Kim secretly added some driving distance? Like, we knew he was young and he was never going to be, like, always remain short off the tee. We knew that, like, that was going to come with time. But he's now gained 4 out of 5 for driving distance in his recent tournaments. And, like, at big boy golf courses like the Rocket Mortgage, where you're, like, banging driver all the time, like long golf courses where the Patrick Rogers of the world play well. So that's really interesting for me, and that piques my interest, because it's like, hey, we've suddenly got this elite ball striker who's extremely accurate off the tee, and, like, oh, he's just added a bunch of distance as well.
Boom. There you have it. Greg, You got another one. How you following that up?
Yeah, I'm going to take a little. Well, you may think this is a risk. I think it's a value based on this price tag, and that's Wyndham Clark at 8,000 flat. Wyndham Clark coming off a back-to-back top 10 finishes at the Travelers and tied 10th last week at the Scottish Open. His putting seems to have kind of come back into form like it was earlier in the year. And I think for a player like Wyndham Clark, that gives him a lot of confidence when he feels like he can make everything he looks at. His iron play this year, it was very good early in the year. It slowed down a little bit. I still believe in his shot-making ability, and I think he can really work in links golf. The other thing I was looking at is in the 2 Opens he's played in, he's finished tied 76th in 22 and tied 33rd in 23. And he really struggled on the greens in both of those. I think Wyndham Clark is a better putter than what we've seen and should gain a lot of confidence from putting well at the Scottish Open last week. So I think Wyndham Clark at 8,000 flat seems like a really good value and a nice piece in this lineup to add a little, I believe, win equity.
I like the pick. We've said on the show, Wyndham has the tendency to show up in big tournaments, right? And play his best golf in these big events. So certainly a big event this week at 8K. I like the upside. Spence, how about you? Are you interested in Wyndham Clark?
I'm indifferent on the pick. Where I like Wyndham Clark is that he possesses upside for the price tag. Elite putter, elite short game in general. Like if you look at some of those short iron proximities, he's inside of the top 5 of my model. If you want to talk about a golfer that if there is a little bit more distance here that's needed, he's going to give you that distance and putting and short iron play that kind of fits everything together there. So I think it's an interesting GPP target at what's probably not going to be a ton of ownership. And then while the opposite is true with Tom Kim, I think he's going to be popular. It's rightfully so, in my opinion. Like what everybody has talked about of him potentially just being an elite link style player, I think from a statistical perspective, you can see why that is.
Boom. There you have it. Spence, you got your work cut out for you here. The audience has a lot of ideas. They're going a lot of directions in the chat. You got to rein them in. Who are you locking in with your third pick?
I mean, here's the question that I would ask. I guess we're going with Hatton based off of it. And I'm fine with the Hatton pick. It's going to leave us with no money, which is the problem. And we're going to have to figure out there is soft pricing. I think it's fine. I guess let's go Tyrrell Hatton. We'll make amends for what didn't happen last time, and we'll put ourselves in the 6,000 range and try to figure out our way from there.
Well, Spence, I agree. I think you said it best. I like Hatton a lot this week. I think he's a really solid pick, but you're leaving yourself in some trouble on how you're going to round out the rest of this squad. Greg, are you interested in Tyrrell Hatton in Scotland this week?
I considered Hatton. I think he's a very popular one and done play this week. That obviously has something to do with what he does on Live Golf. But he has also kind of showed up in major championships and played a whole lot better than his finish is reflected at the U.S. Open. He had a terrible day on Sunday, specifically on the greens. And I don't think you're going to run into an issue like that here at the Open Championship. A little slower greens, a little more benign. Look, he's won with the Alfred Dunhill links at Carnoustie and St. Andrews, and I think there's one other course in there that they play as well. So yeah, some good links pedigree. I think Hatton's a fine play.
Boom, pick endorsed. David, would love your take on Tyrrell Hatton, and then you're up with your third pick.
Yeah, I'm fine with Hatton. I mean, one thing I want to comment on, which has just been hilarious for me, is that Joel was like trying so hard to instigate this rivalry between Spencer and the audience. Like he's really like pushing for this like kind of tumultuous relationship to develop, and Spencer's playing it like cool, calm, and collected, and just like, no, we'll let the audience pick. That's fine. I would have gone this way, but this is what the audience voted. We'll stick to the rules. Yeah, just very, very interesting. But look, hey, Hatton finished 5th last time that the Open Championship was held here in Royal Troon. I think that's real positive, but he does come with a ton of ownership, and I think there are risks involved with him. I don't know if he's like the safest. I think it really is kind of a boom or bust play. That would be my concern, and kind of the opposite of that was the Wyndham Clark pick by Greg, where you're getting so much leverage in terms of ownership, as well as salary saving and a ton of upside. Like I'm seeing 6% on Wyndham Clark at the moment in terms of ownership. So I think he's a really interesting leverage play for those large GPPs. So that leaves me with the ability to go and take who I was hoping would get back to me. I think I've got to take someone in that 7K range just so that Joel doesn't steal them from me. And a golfer that I'm extremely high on this week is Alex Noren. Alex Noren has had a fantastic history of links golf just across the board. And one thing that I find really difficult, and a lot of DFS players will find really difficult, is for players who play the majority of their golf on the PGA Tour, is they don't get to play links golf. Like they don't. Like there really just isn't any courses on the PGA Tour regular schedule where you can say, oh yeah, that's a links course and like it's going to be a good guide. The one course where you can link it is the PGA National Honda Classic, which has like some of the most interesting correlation that you can perhaps find of any PGA Tour event to other Open Championship venues. So Patrick Harrington won the Honda Classic twice. He's won the Open Championship twice. Ernie Els won both. Rory McIlroy's won both. And you've got a bunch of players who have either finished first or second and alternated between the two. Tiger Woods is obviously in there because, you know, it's Tiger, but you've got guys like Seb Straka. You've got guys like Shane Lowry who have shown up at both. Tommy Fleetwood's played very well there. Alex Noren's got 3 top 10s in recent history at the PGA National. That obviously complements the fact he's won the Scottish Open before and he finished 3rd. Now, that was when it was at Castle Stewart Golf Links, a different venue to the Renaissance. And that's pleasing for me in some ways because the Renaissance is like diet links golf. And Castle Stewart is like a true golf links test, which is what you're going to find at Royal Troon this week coming. And so that Noren finished 10th at the Scottish Open last week as well. So I think he's got a ton of upside. I think he's really got the ability to go out and finish top 10, maybe even surprise everyone with a victory this week, given the correlation with some of those courses. And the final thing I mentioned is the Honda Classic has weirdly, outside of Stenson, had a ton of correlation to winners at Royal Troon itself. And so this is before it was at PGA National, but it more speaks to what those Florida courses really test, which is your ability to play in the wind and keep it safe in the fairways. So Todd Hamilton, 500-1 winner at Royal Troon, the huge shock. His only other win came at the Honda Classic. Mark Calcavecchia, he won the Honda Classic, he won at Royal Troon. Justin Leonard, he won at the Honda Classic, he won at Royal Troon. So outside of Stenson, 3 of the last 4 have all won at the Honda Classic. So some really nice links there, and the fact that Noren's played well there just reiterates his ability on these link style courses.
Can I take this really fast, Joel? I'll keep this to 35 seconds or less. So if I would have started and I had my ability to start a build how I wanted it to be, I would have taken Fleetwood, Morikawa, and then Noren. I thought that this late addition into the field for Noren got us much softer pricing in various iterations of the market. DFS would be one of the answers. I bet him at 135-1 on Monday when he opened. That number's gotten decimated down, but my model didn't rank him worse than 23rd for any of the 6 main categories that I ran. That includes a comp course answer of 6th overall and a scrambling return when I add in some of that ability to scramble from out of the sand of 4th overall. I agree 100% with David here where there's top 10 equity, but there's also hidden win equity to where I'm not going to go out on a limb. He's 135-1. He's 89, 100-1 now. There is a real chance that if somebody shocks from down beneath, he's one of those names to keep in mind.
Noren having a great season, a good fit on the links. A lot to like about Noren. Greg, would love your take. Are you interested in Alex Noren this week?
Yeah, there was a little bit of slowdown with him. Struggled at the Canadian Open and the U.S. Open and the Rocket Mortgage, and some of those really great ball striking numbers we saw slowed down a little bit. But I think it's really encouraging that he stepped up and performed really well at the Scottish Open. It certainly brings a lot of those things that you guys just brought up right back into play. You no longer question his form. You just say, okay, he had a couple of slower weeks. But Alex Noren has had a great year, and I think that often leads to great performances in the Open.
Boom. There you have it. All right. I'm going to take my 2 picks here. We're going to move things along as I'm running a little bit behind time. I'm going to take my 2 favorite value plays on the board. I'm surprised they both lasted to me. The first one's obvious. I've been taking him pretty much every week for the last few weeks, and that's Sung Jae Im. at 6,900, he is just underpriced. Whether he's a good course fit or not, what have you, it doesn't matter. Sungjae Im is a upper tier golfer. To get him in the 6K range is a mispricing. My only concern is what that ownership number ends up looking like, because it's obvious that he's underpriced. And I think a lot of people are going to go out and want to play him this week. I'm going to pair him with Aaron Rai, who has just playing unbelievable golf, right? And at this point, at 7,300, that also feels like an underpricing. Now, I will acknowledge that a lot of his great results that we've seen recently are coming in watered down field compared to what he's going to be going up against this week. But you can't take that away from him. He went up against a competition that was put in front of him, and he has played excellent golf. At 7,300, with as well as he is striking the ball, and especially with the putter that he's found recently, which, historically has been his biggest issue. If he continues that hot putting this week, I think you get another excellent result from him at 7,300. Greg, we'll go to you here. Anything not to like about either Sungjae or Rai?
Well, Sungjae's had a really hard time in major championships this year specifically, which could give you a little bit of concern. I think what you're seeing out of him over the last couple of weeks, however, is an improvement in the iron play, which is the way that Sungjae likes to get the job done. So I do think that's a good sign. It'd be very unlikely for Sungjae to miss all 4 cuts in a major in a year, in my opinion. But missing the first 3 doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. And as for Aaron Rai, just real quick on that putter change, the change in ability on the greens. He went to a new putting coach in John Graham, and they very simply just worked on green reading techniques, and it has worked near immediately. So I think it keeps things simple, and I think there's a reason why you've seen that improvement. It's not just a hot streak. I think it's legitimate. So I love the play of Aaron Rai.
That is the expert analysis we bring Greg on for. And I mean, you're right. This was a guy who was on team no putt for a long time. And over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks even, he's gained almost 6 strokes, 9 strokes, 5 strokes. I mean, he's not just putting well. He is putting excellent. It has become a strength of his game, which is definitely new for him. All right, David, you got your 4th pick here, 7,400 per pick. Who are you looking at?
Yeah, like both those picks from you, Joel, very quickly. Like Aaron Rai, like what he's doing, like what Greg says, looks like the putter changes and improvements are permanent, and it's an actual immediate gain he's gained from the putting coach. I said last week about Sungjae Im that he hadn't done much on links golf courses and kind of tried to talk you out of him. Obviously came out and played 4th. And interesting enough, I was talking about those correlations between the Honda Classic and the PGA National and Open Championship. Sungjae's a former winner of the Honda Classic. So there you go. If you haven't got much links form and his limited experiences on links courses, he's got that going for him. And I'm actually going to take another winner of the Honda Classic here, a very accurate golfer, one who can absolutely stripe it off the tee in terms of his approach metrics, saves a bit of salary as well, so that Spence, the audience, and Greg don't hopefully steal him for me. And that's Russell Henley. Russell Henley's 16th in this field for driving accuracy of the last 6 months, 20th for approach, 18th for around the green, 14th for strokes gained putting, 19th for strokes gained tee to green, and 13th for strokes gained total overall in the last 6 months within this field. Now, you think that's a golfer at 6,700 and you're hitting those kind of numbers in one of the strongest fields in golf. I feel that he's really undervalued. I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that he hasn't typically performed very well on links courses. His best finish is the 20th place. I get that, but given those correlations to the Honda Classic and the way that I think he particularly shapes for the chase that Royal Troon is going to provide, I think 6,700 is very, very great value where you can save some money, spend up big up top.
Russell Henley having another great season at 6,700. He feels underpriced. I'll be honest, I was considering him with one of my last picks as well. Greg, how about you? Are you interested in Russell Henley?
On the First Cut podcast, we call Russell Henley a top 10 player in the world, somewhat tongue-in-cheek. But if you can get a top 10 player in the world at 6,700, I think there's a lot to like about it. So, yeah, we're big fans of him over there. I like what he's done on the greens specifically. He really showed an ability to fill it up on the greens. And when you're talking about major championship golf courses, you will miss greens, and you got to have a putter that's reliable to save those pars. And when you hit some of the short irons close the way that Russell Henley tends to do, you got to take advantage of those birdies. So, yeah, I think he's a fine play.
Boom. Pick endorse Spence. You and the audience are up here. There's a lot of thoughts in the chat. Would love to see how you plan to ruin the audience's team.
Joel, if this was 1999 WWE, you would be the number one heel on Vince McMahon's roster with what you are trying to do. I see you're frozen right now, which might even make you more of a heel with it. But the audience likes Louis. This is what I'm going to say about Louis. He's inside the top 20 of my model. When he opened at 110-1, and we've seen the overcorrection happen at this point where he's drifted down now into the 60s. I do think that in the 100 range there, if we're giving a betting answer, he was probably one of the best values on the board. Didn't end up getting there myself, funny enough, with all those answers being given, but I like Louis this week. I don't have a problem with him whatsoever.
Wow. You know what's funny about Louis? It's been so long since we've heard his name, especially on this show. I miss him. I welcome him back. I'm excited to watch him play this week. Greg, how about you? Are you interested in Louis this week?
So, I just have a really hard time judging performances on Live Golf, what they actually mean. And I don't think that they are meaningless. I think there's a sign that he's shooting good scores and playing good golf. But I guess I'm just concerned or maybe irritated that you turn down the PGA Championship invitation and you don't try to qualify for the U.S. Open. It leaves me scratching my head with Louis. So it's the one major that we're going to get to see him play this year, which I'm looking forward to. I personally would probably stay away from those reasons, but I absolutely understand the play.
Boom. There you have it. Greg, you got two. You have about 6,900 per pick left. Where are you looking to go from here?
Yeah. First and foremost, this is an area I'm still going to continue to spend a little bit of money because I think there's some opportunity down at the bottom of the board here. So first and foremost, I'm going to go with Akshay Bhatia. David, you mentioned the importance of, the correlation in Florida golf. And when I look at Akshay, his performance in tropical environments has been very strong. Even back when he was on the Korn Ferry Tour, he played very well in the Bahamas and events like that where it's very windy and there's a very high penalty for missing fairways. I think you're going to see that this week. He has been an elite driver of the golf ball over the last, 6 or 8 weeks. And a lot of that has come from accuracy, which I really like this week, even though he's not short. He's got the ability to flight the ball up and down, which I'm thrilled about. I think we'll play. He likes to play shots, and he's going to have the opportunity to do so this week. And what he's done with the long putter this year has been just phenomenal. So I think Akshay comes in confident, underpriced, and I think he's got some pretty serious upside at 7,000.
I love the pick. He was on my list as one of the next picks I was going to make. So I have to pivot from here. Spence, how about you? Are you interested in Akshay?
I'm just reading the chat right now. Silent Assassin's comment is one of the funnier things I've seen in quite some time. But no, his ball striking ability is very impressive. He's underpriced. He's going to be popular. I think I understand why everybody wants to go with him with the ball striking numbers. You just have to make a decision based off of the ownership, and that's really the decision point at the end of the day.
Boom. There you have it. Greg, you got one more. How you following that one up?
I'll be curious to see if this one is chalky as well, and maybe it will be. Maybe it won't be, but it's Cameron Young at 7,500. I like what he's done over the last couple of weeks. He's been hitting the ball really well all year. He's struggled with the putter. Maybe it's rounded into form a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but a nice finish at the Travelers and the Rocket Mortgage. Then I just can't ignore what he's done in Open Championships and Links Golf before with a tied second, obviously second place at St. Andrews and a tied 8th last year as well. So I think Cam Young also brings to the table just a ton of upside. And I think just about everybody in this lineup so far has a really good chance of, top 10, has really high top 10 upside, if not win equity. which I'm really thrilled about with the first 5 picks.
Yeah, I certainly support those picks. I think Cameron Young's an interesting one to talk about because he's pretty polarizing selection, but I think he has a ton of upside. I also think he could miss the cut. So it could go a lot of different directions there. But I'd love to get your take, David. Are you interested in Cameron Young?
I think Cameron Young's a really interesting option. In terms of ownership, Greg, I'm seeing 9.5% on him at the moment, which isn't dreadful. I think that actually comes backwards because you look at some of the names around him, right? You've got Aaron Rye right there, who's just obviously in great form and clearly too cheap for how well he's been playing. Got guys like Brian Harmon, the former Open Championship. People are going to see the wind and they're going to be like, oh, accurate golfer, putting, we'll go with Brian Harmon. Then you've got Bobby Mack right there. Like, Robert McIntyre's 25-1 to win the tournament. He's the same price as Tommy Fleetwood and John Rahm to win this event. And he's priced at 7,700 because the pricing came out before the Scottish Open finished up. So he's way too cheap. And he's only at like 8% at the moment in my projections. Like, that's going way up. When push comes to shove, when everyone gets their lineups in, Bobby Mack is going to get absolutely hammered in terms of the ownership. So I don't think Cameron Young's going to be chalky at all. And I think he's a really interesting high upside leverage play where a lot of people have just been stung by Scam Young as he gets dubbed a lot over the last few years. And you don't need him to go and win the tournament. Like, he could go at this price, he can go and finish top 10 and you're getting a ton of leverage. So I think it's a really savvy play from Greg there.
Boom, pick endorsed. All right, Spence, how are you going to clean up this mess that the audience left you with in the chat?
We are going with Siwoo Kim. The one thing I want to say about the Cam Young discussion, just very quickly, and we can move into the Siwoo Kim and what everybody thinks about it, is I've said this numerous times on the show. I just want to say it one more time because it's important in this situation. When you get this moniker attached to you and you get a nickname that is not necessarily the most pleasing, like, that does affect players that don't want to go back and use that golfer. I tend to agree that I don't think he's going to end up being 9% owned. I think he'll probably be a little bit less than that. Very high ceiling if he puts it together. We all know about the bust potential that he brings. Everybody who's bet him over the last 2 years has experienced the bad at some point, but there is a ceiling here at a $7,500 price tag that you at least have to consider. Like, he's one of those names down there where the upside starts to outweigh some of that volatility that enters the mix.
Boom. Listen, he looked great last week. He's been very consistent this season. I agree. I think there's a lot to like about Siwoo this week, especially. How about you, Greg? Are you interested in Siwoo Kim?
I am interested in Siwoo Kim. I think it's pretty safe. He's done a really nice job of being consistent this year, which has not really been the factor for him throughout his career. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him finish, T25, which seems to be very common with what he's been doing lately. So yeah, ultimately I do like the pick, especially at the price tag. I think at 6,800, he's a worthy 6K play.
Pick endorsed. Great job, Spence. David.
While Joel has his robot moment, I was in absolute giggles there over what Joel was doing to Spence, this mess that the audience has left here. It's like so good. Hey, so I'm going to go and take a golfer kind of in that salary range that that Joel's probably looking at, because otherwise I don't think I'm going to get him back, and that's Shane Lowry. I mean, Shane Lowry's fantastic at links golf. He's having a great year again. I've talked extensively about those links with the Honda Classic, PGA National. Shane Lowry's had runner-up finish at PGA National as well, and he's got a great record on that golf course particularly. Great record at the Open Championship in general as well, as being a winner at Royal Portrush, obviously famously in Ireland as well. So I think he's a great option to be able to take here. His ability in the wind's going to be really, really helpful. Again, another driver who's long but also accurate. And yeah, I just think that with the ton of upside, he's going to take some of the chalk away from Tom Kim for sure. But I do think he's a great option to consider around that price.
I think that's a solid pick. Shane Lowry certainly makes sense in Scotland on the links course. His form is there. Greg, are you interested in Shane Lowry this week?
He's really an interesting player. I think there's a lot to like. One of the biggest things that I would like is it seems like the putting disaster that he displayed earlier in the year that caused me so much pain has kind of turned around. And it's got, I feel like I keep talking about guys who have turned it around on the greens. But when great ball strikers figure something out with their putting, the results have a tendency of following. And Shane Lowry certainly fits that category at this point.
All right. Pick endorsed, locked in. I got two here to wrap up my draft, and I am going to start with a familiar face who I always take. He is back, and that is Hideki Matsuyama. Hideki was having a great season before. Things have slowed down for him. He had an injury. But if you look at the way he performed last week, he missed the cut, right? But I think if you look a little deeper into the statistics of why he missed the cut, he was just awful putting. Otherwise, he was hitting the ball pretty well. And I think, Hideki's not a horrendous putter. I think he turns that around this week. He putts a little bit better, and I think he gets you a good result. Like, for the most part, we've been seeing from him for a majority of this season. At 8,500, I think it's a pretty good value. I mean, before he missed the cut at the Genesis, he was 23rd at the Travelers. He made 6th at the U.S. Open. He was 8th at the Memorial. He plays up at these big events. I think he's going to play up this week and have a good result. And I'll finalize my draft with Corey Conners, who has really elevated his game more recently. Not only with his driver, he is crushing the ball, but he is putting the ball really well. And if he continues to find that putter this week, where last week he gained 4 strokes putting. I mean, he gained 7 at the Canadian Open. He gained over 3 strokes at the U.S. Open. If he gains anything over 3 strokes putting with the way he's striking the ball, I think you get another top 15 or even top 10 result from Corey Conners. I'll go to you, Greg. What are your thoughts on both Hideki and Corey Conners this week?
Well, they have something similar in common. They tend to play really difficult golf courses very well, which you love in major championships. So when you're looking at rounding out your lineup with guys who have major championship resumes that are solid, they've contended in them, then in Hideki's case, won them. It's a good feeling to have. So I definitely like the plays. The Open Championship isn't my favorite major for Hideki. I didn't like what I saw on the greens last week, but we've seen players miss the cut at the Scottish Open and win the Open the week after. So I certainly don't fault you there.
Boom. I love that. David, would love your take on Hideki and Conners, and then you're up with your last pick.
I'm going to start with a question. Joel, if I had not taken Shane Lowry there, would he have remained on the board?
Well, who would you have taken?
I would have taken Corey Conners.
He probably would have, yes.
Okay. So it was a toss-up between those two. I was about to end. I got to Shane Lowry. I was like, this is the first Draftcast in a long time where I haven't had a pick stolen. I've made it all the way through clean. Maybe this is where I get that runner-up monkey off my back, finally get across the line. And what does Joel do with his last pick? He goes and takes Corey Conners, the exact player that I thought was going to be real sneaky at the end, be able to round up my lineup perfectly. And here we go. We're here once again. Corey Conners, I'm so high on his chances here, right? If we're talking about a golf course where if we think that it's going to be a tough golf course, we have to manage your way around, where ball strikers are going to be able to elevate themselves at these small greens, we know what Corey Conners at his core is. He's an elite ball striker who's very accurate off the tee. But then we've seen him add so much driving distance this year. I've been going on about it literally all season. If you've been tuning in regularly to this, if you've been reading my articles, Corey Conners has added driving distance this year and nobody's really talking about it. He really has. So he's turned from this golfer who was a little bit too short off the tee to really be competitive to a golfer who's kind of got all these different assets, and he's gaining a heat putting in all of his recent tournaments. He really is. And in a big way. He's gaining strokes putting. So I think Corey Conners is a wonderful pick. Gutted that I don't get him. I'm going to have to go on a bit of a tangent here. Take a different golfer. So would have been Corey Conners. Then would have been Aaron Rai. My third pick in that range would be Minwoo Lee. We're starting to see him perform a little bit better in the majors. He's a guy who's always possessed a lot of upside. as I mentioned, links between Honda Classic and Links Golf. He finished second at the Cognizant earlier this year at PGA National. He's won the Scottish Open before, so he's got some good links form to him. I think that a lot of people as well are going to be out on Min Woo Lee this week because they were really high on him going into the Scottish Open. He finished 73rd. He didn't look all that great. So it's one of those things where the market kind of like overreacts, and now he finds himself priced in a range where you've got guys like Aaron Wright, Corey Connors, who are going to be eating a lot of the ownership percentage, and you've got to get some leverage off the back of that. And then you've got Brian Harman right there as well. So there's a lot of other ways that people are going to go. I think Min Woo's a very feasible pivot that you can look to. Someone who tends to be a bit better around the greens, very, very good putter as well, which we know is good for links golf. So happy to round out my lineup with him. Would have liked Corey Connors, official steal from Joel there, but we'll round out with Min Woo Lee, and hopefully we can get this monkey off the back and get the win on the PGA Draftcast this week.
Love the steal. Hopefully that costs you the win this week. Spence, would love your take on Min Woo Lee, and then you got your last pick to finalize your team.
I think Min Woo's fine. Just very quickly before I give the pick here, it seems like the audience is going to let me make this selection here. I'm going to make a bold prediction on this show. I'm going to say that the winning Millionaire Maker lineup ends up having Hideki Matsuyama in it. He's a little boom or bust in my model, but there's a lot of boom potential. Like there's a lot of what I saw with Robert McIntyre where it got chalkier as the week went on, but for all the right reasons with it. I'm intrigued by Hideki. I don't think I have room for the outright ticket to Adam. There is a 60 out there. Just going to throw that out there. For me, when I looked down at this board, I thought there were a handful of names that I was willing to consider here. Adam Scott, Victor Perez. I did not like Billy Horschel last week. I think Horschel's fine. Abraham Answer makes some sense. There's a handful of other players that we could talk about. But, Joel, we always discuss, I try to theme my shirts for what the tournament actually is. Well, I don't have anything to do with the Open Championship. But what I do have right now is I have a UNLV t-shirt on, which I'll show in a second. I have Jerry Tarkanian on the shirt. One of the best UNLV golfers of all time, Adam Scott, who almost took down the tournament last week. I'm going to go with Adam Scott here to round it. I know we have a lot of popularity on this build, but I think Adam Scott, even if you look at the betting market of the way that this is trending right now, every one of these other names is 125 to 1 or higher with some similar ownership on a few of them. Maybe would have gone Russell Henley had he been a choice instead. With him not being an option, Adam Scott's in his own world right now when it comes to actual win equity, and he's also the top person on my model for just basing it off of that.
Boom. Adam Scott certainly looked good last week. Would love your take, Greg. Do you like Adam Scott this week?
He's been so consistent this year. He's been so steady at 6,700. I really like getting a reliable cut maker into the mix. It does seem like his ball striking is starting to look like Adam Scott of old, which is pretty cool to see because, over the last couple of years, he's really improved on the greens and the ball striking may have slipped a little bit. It seems like that's headed back in the right direction. So I wouldn't mind watching Adam Scott in his beige sweater and beige pants competing in the final round of an Open Championship this Sunday.
Boom. I love it. I love it. Now, Greg, you got a good-looking squad here. Only 6,400 left with your last pick. How are you going to round out this roster?
Yeah, I'm going to leave quite a bit of money on the table here, but I think this is going to work. I don't love a lot of the players under 6,400. And they're under 6,400 for a reason. So I'm going to give the 5K range a little bit of love here. I'm going to go down to Matthew Jordan, who finished tied 26 last week at the Scottish Open. He missed a couple of cuts before that, but finished 12th at the Scandinavian Mix, 13th at the European Open, tied 5th at the Sudal Open. He's been playing some really good golf on the DP World Tour. And he also came in tied 10th in the Open Championship last year. So I like his chances. I think he's a player that's rounded into form and can handle the big championship like this.
Matthew Jordan, cousins with all-time winner Michael Jordan. Great. That's a joke. They're definitely not cousins. But great pick. That rounds out the draft this week. We will be posting these lineups on Twitter Let us know which team you like the most. We will circle back next week and crown a champion. Audience, can you repeat? Will Greg take the crown, and can David finally get over that second place hump? We're not done yet. Before we get you out of here tonight, we do have our first round leader plays. And with that, we will start with David. David, who are you looking at in the first round leader market?
I love Matthew Jordan, by the way. He's my boy. I love him on my links courses.
All right.
Royal Liverpool member. Excellent pick. You could have gone Ewan Ferguson there as well. Really good links form, Ewan Ferguson, and dropped off the radar. So both of those really nice options. And Greg just bringing the elite knowledge. I believe Greg won last time we had him on the show at the Masters as well. So technically he's kind of the defending champ, I believe. So given this kind of large gap between the appearances, but shout out to Greg, and amazing having you on the show again, mate. I really appreciate all your time. I've got 6, but they're all pretty long. They're all 40 to 1 or longer for the first round leaders. So Tommy Fleetwood 40 to 1, Tom Kim 55 to 1, Adam Scott 60 to 1, Aaron Rice 66 to 1, Alex Noren 70 to 1. It's probably my favorite Alex Noren. He goes out in the second group on Thursday morning, and he's in awesome form, loves links golf, and it looks like the win only builds as the day goes on Thursday. So he gets to go out really nice and early. I think Alex Noren just sneakily could be first round leader here at pretty big odds. And then Russell Henley will round it out at 90 to 1. So all big odds, 6 selections, but all 40 to 1 or more. And hopefully one of those can cash for us again in the first round leader market.
I really like that card. I have a couple of dupes that I might switch, so we don't have the same picks, but I really like that card. Spence, how about you? Who are you looking at in the first round leader market?
I don't technically have anything right now. I will give a matchup play. The one thing I do want to say, though, is I will also be betting Alex Noren. That's too high of a number, too early in the round, and one of the biggest upside climbers that I have in my model from any specific day that I'm looking. So I think Noren in those like 80 to 1 sort of range for a first round leader is very interesting. The play that I'll give out on here for a matchup, as everybody knows who listens to me, like I normally don't go the star versus star route. You can hear a more in-depth answer on some of those Action Network shows that I've done of why I'm going in this direction, but I took Colin Morikawa minus 120 over Bryson DeChambeau this week.
All right. I love it. I love it. Greg, how about you? Who are you looking at in the first round leader market?
I'm not looking at anybody in the first round leader market. I'm going to pivot to a top 20 market, which I really like these plays. I think there's some great options, and this isn't the longest of odds, but I think there's a really good likelihood of this happening, and that's Patrick Cantlay. I think Patrick Cantlay has started to really turn around his performances in major championships. Very nearly won the U.S. Open, probably his best performance in a major to date. And he played really well at the Travelers as well the very next week. So I think you're going to see Patrick Cantlay put on a great performance, and I like him for a top 20. I think you can get that at about plus 160 or plus 180, somewhere in that range, depending on where you're looking.
I love that pick. Appreciate you as always. I got 5 first round leader plays for you to take a look at. I mentioned earlier Tommy Fleetwood at 40 to 1. Cam Smith wasn't mentioned on the show, but 45 to 1. I think he could be an interesting first round leader play. Tom Kim, 55 to 1. Corey Connors, 60 to 1. And my last one, if we're swinging for the fences, we're going to have some fun. We're going to go with Christian Bezuidenhout at 100 to 1. That's a wrap for our first round leader plays. Don't forget, if you don't already, sign up for Win Daily. We will post some updates in Discord. So as we get weather updates, there might be a different edge that we change to. Get in our Discord. We will update you. We will have our outright winners posted as well, so you get to see that. And don't forget Steven's ownership article we release tomorrow night. That is critical for understanding ownership. If you're playing DFS, you will want to know that to understand where you can get an edge in some of these big tournaments. Greg, we super appreciate you. You're so knowledgeable as always. You're one of the best guests we get on this show. You rocked it tonight. I'm a little bit worried your team is going to take it down. I actually think it might. Super great draft. Appreciate you as always. Before we get you out of here, tell everyone what else you're doing this week and where else they can find you.
Oh, there's a lot of action going on this week. We'll be on a New Breed of Golf tomorrow morning, 8 to 10 Eastern on Sirius XM. And then throughout the week, we'll have our post-round stuff on the First Cut podcast. So right after on Thursday, basically immediately after that round, we'll go live and break down all the first round action and highlight some of your first round leader picks that are certainly going to be up there. And then on Friday, we have a First Cut podcast on CBS Sports Network. That'll be at 2:00 Eastern. And then we go right back at it at 4:00 for a second round update. And I'll be on the Saturday and Sunday show as well, breaking down all the action. So yeah, you want to hear my thoughts any day of the week on this Open, you'll be able to hear it.
We're way over. I'm going to get to that, Greg. I'm going to tell you a quick fun story before I let you go. Last time you came on our show, you had amazing. We had a great time, and I knew you were on the radio. It was for the Masters, and I'm in the car the next morning with my family, and I'm like, "Hear the guy on the radio? That's the guy that was on my podcast last night." I tried to make myself seem like such a big deal. I was like, "See, he knows me. He was with me on the podcast, and now he's on the radio."
Yeah, I'm sure that your family loves listening to golf talk on the radio, and I'm sure they think that I'm a real big star for it.
Yeah, my 3-year-old son was just saying wheels in the golf the entire time. But still, I appreciated it. I super appreciate you tonight. You were excellent, as always. Did I forget anything?
No, but I would just like to say thank you to you boys for having me on. It's always fun. These are really fun episodes. I'm glad to be able to do it with you, and hopefully I can defend my title from the last time I was on for the Masters. So thank you again, guys. Great stuff.
Don't quote me on this, but I want to say that of all the guests that we've had on, I think only like 2 or 3 people have actually won. So it's a very small group that you're in there, Greg.
Yeah, it's quite well. I can see why, because you guys know what you're doing with these lineups, and I read all your stuff, like I said, every week, and it helps me get ready for every tournament. So I appreciate all the work you guys do as well.
Greg DuCharme is the Brooks Koepka of the PGA Draftcast. He just turns up at the major championships and suddenly puts in wins. So we'll see how it does. But the pleasure is all ours. Greg, great having you on. Thanks for coming back again. Second thing I'd say is as soon as Spencer said he's going for a matchup of 2 high-end players, I knew it was Morikawa versus Bryson. I'm on that matchup as well. I don't like this course for Bryson. I really like it for Morikawa. The third thing I'll say is sports.